Hello. Hold on, is this on? Yeah. Hola. Or should I say, yeah, hola? Hola. Or should I say, Sia? Kusonom. Kusonom for being here. Did I say it right? I'm trying to learn, and that's all I know, by the way. Really excited to be here. Okay, I'm going to take this off. Hopefully I don't get the, because I cannot see my notes. But by the way, we have this thing, the presenters, for those that don't see it. We call it the confidence monitor. I see it, and then I feel good. That's why it's called that, and also because I get to read all the crap that I'm going to say. So I'm really excited to be here, and I, again, kusonom, I've been practicing my Hungarian. And by the way, Sia sounds like Sia. That's how I learn it, because it's the opposite of what you're saying. So I was like, okay, that's curious, that's cool. Now it's in my head. So also I learned, because as you can see, I'm super nervous, and I drank a lot of coffee, and it's kavet kerat sepen. Yeah? And that's, for those that don't know, thank you. That's coffee, pretty please. So today we're going to be talking about UI animation. So hot right now, right? And before we start, we're gonna get real right now, okay? I was having a little bit of an existential crisis, like right now, like here. And I went and edited my presentation to add something. I'm going to be talking about things that I believe, things that have worked for me, but that doesn't mean that it will work for you. So I'm going to, what I would like you to do is listen, but not really listen. Because again, what works for me might not work for you. And by the way, I'm just like old, I'm boring, and I'm full of biases. And I wouldn't want you to get your fresh, youthful minds contaminated by ideas. So just challenge everything. Make your own opinion, or at least take it with a grain of salt. Because I have a confession, and I think I'm not the only one on this. We're all kind of making it up as we go. We're all just like trying to figure this thing out, which is like, I'm here, but to be honest, I'm making it up sometimes. And it's okay, I guess. But you can make it up too. That's what I'm trying to say. So my advice before I start is just like, even with this, and most importantly, with UI animation, it sounds so fun, right? So just have fun, break things, break shit, and keep it weird, okay? And don't take things too seriously. Have you noticed that? When did we start getting so serious? Didn't we designers wear like the cool guys and gals in the team? I don't know, sorry, end of rant. So, having said that, now let's start with your animation. But so today, we're going to be learning some practical tips to improve your micro interactions. And let's get animated, okay? That's a pun. So we have a limited amount of time, but we do have a menu. This is the agenda today. Most of it is going to be just me. Just going to be talking about me, and then we're gonna get into your animation. Just super fast, because I think you're all for me, right? So our goal today is trying to make animations, or at least understand animations in a way that makes it obvious. That because when something is obvious and it's just like you understand it, it's just like, it means that it's working when you don't really have to think too much about it. So that's our goal, a stretch goal, animations that feel magical. And this is a little bit harder, but once you get there, then stuff just happens. And it makes you feel a little bit good. So the sources of the stuff that I'm talking today a lot of it is coming from smarter people than me, from IBM Animation, from Google, from Apple, and from also a giant book that is called the Animator's Survival Kit. And this is like an amazing book on just like on hand-drawn animation, and I learned a lot from it, so highly recommend it. And by the way, yeah, my name is Pablo Stanley. Hi, hola. And soy un diseñador. Diseñador. Say it with me, diseñador. And all the ladies say diseñadora. In Spanish, we have gender, they're not, some stuff is not gender neutral, as you have to say diseñador, diseñadora. So yeah, this is turning into a Spanish class right now. So if the animation stuff doesn't work, at least you learn that, okay? So about me, I do illustrations. I made illustrations in the most boring way, just like creating a system with illustrations. This thing is called avatars. It's pretty cool. Just download it. It's avatars with AAA. I also did one that is called bots with triple T. And also some illustrations like artsy-fartsy stuff. I also write comics. I'm gonna go fast about it. And I have a comic series called The Design Team, thedesignteam.io. And sometimes in those comics, I add a little bit of GIFs and animation. So some of the stuff is like going to be bleeding into this presentation too. Regarding the designteam.io, it's just a bunch of comics on stories, stuff that has happened to me once I moved to Silicon Valley, and just like getting into the whole startup culture. So a little bit of it is autobiographical. So here, let me show you just, because we are in Halloween, a little Halloween comic. So here, they're gathered together, and then the product manager said, let's just use this as a sign I made on PowerPoint. No, everyone, of course. How are we running to? This is the designer horror stories. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm a product designer. So that's the other thing that I do. That's what actually pays the bills. So yeah, and yeah, so that's actually what I do and what I'm going to be talking about. And also, I work at a company called Envision. It's prototyping and stuff like that. By the way, we're hiring, and it's all remote. The company's remote, so if you want to apply, you should be putting there your information. We're looking for talented designers and developers and product people like you. Okay, so enough about me. Just a little bit. So what's the big deal with UI animation? I like to think about animation as the body language of a product. It's this non-verbal communication in which physical behavior, like that guy, that's supposed to be me, is used to express something. And for example, on body language, we use facial expressions, we use body posture, we use eye movement. All of those little things can tell you a lot without using a word. So in the same way, I think UI animation can use, with user interfaces, we can change color, we can change the shape, we can change the opacity, the position, and all of those properties, when they're moving, when they're changing, can be used to communicate something. So, your animation can provide feedback, give the idea of control, present the status, the illusion of control, at least. And it just like helps you, or helps the people that is using your product, just like answer the question, wait, what just happened? And I don't know if you noticed this on the web, but almost everything is just static. You go from one state to the other, and it's just like cut, cut, cut. There's sometimes little to no context between one state and the other. And every time a page is loaded, with every click we make, something changes, and we ask ourselves, so hold on, what happened? What changed? What is the same? We ask ourselves those things. And it's really fast. We're smart, we still get it, but it still takes a little bit on our heads. So animation could actually help that. So here, we're just going through states, and we kind of understand. But if we use animation the right way, it can guide people, provide that feedback, give that sense of direct manipulation. I touched this, and then something happened. So it just answers the question, what just happened? And you're probably not convinced, by the way. So let's do a test. And I call this the cage test. So we have here 3 photos of Nicolas Cage, the one true God. So can you tell me what's happening? So the mouse is, oh, apparently it's not. Yeah, so we click, and then Nicolas Cage moves, right? So what do you think is happening? So the third cage, we click on it, and then it just moves, right? And the other ones stay static. What if I told you that's not what's happening? But you wouldn't know without animation. What if I told you that when you click on it, it actually move over there, and then the other one move up there? You're being an old fool. And that's why animation is important. I rest my case. Okay. Oh my, that was my pun. I was only building that. Okay, so let's just start with some principles. We all have principles. They just help us make decisions, or at least blame our decisions on those principles. And by the way, these are my opinions. So first and foremost, animation has a purpose. It feels natural and adds character. So let's just start with purpose. And it tells you what is happening when an action is taken. Here, I love this. This is a common example. If you have a smartphone like an Android or an iPhone, you've probably seen this when you make a mistake on your password. Just like it doesn't give you an error message red with a warning icon telling you, you're wrong, do it again. Just a simple animation, it tells you, hey, try again. Or hey, it worked. Hey, you just inputted 4 numbers. Really subtle, really small, and it told you a lot of things that are happening, just simple animation. Has an intention, shows what are the available actions, what's next. It also feels natural, and this means that it has these tactile qualities. The elements behave as we expect them to behave. They obey the basic laws of physics. And here we have this, hold on, is it moving? Yeah. So tap on it, and then it just like falls into place. Things move. It has a little bit of inertia, momentum. It just makes sense. And this one is a little bit trickier because it's not as easy, but it can also add character. And I say that it can be tricky because it can be subjective. And this is something that you really have to work on. It can help celebrate moments in a user journey and express the brand's personality, which is, again, something that is very, very different from one product to the other. So what are the things that animation can improve? It shows a response. It tells you where to go. It can help you meditate and concentrate. And it tells you for every action, there's a reaction. And it can just also, like I was saying, can make it feel personal. So let's start with giving feedback. By the way, this is an app. It's a little game called Contrast. It's really cool. But it's not really the game. What I wanted to show you is the interaction to buying that game. Here, it's just driving your attention to the available option. It's telling you, like, hey, over here, here's the interaction that you need to do. It guides you. It also shows you orientation. It can show you how to complete an action. It's almost like educational. It tells you what to do. It can focus your attention. Remove the elements that are not necessary once you make an action, once you make a decision. And okay, let's remove all that. Let's zoom in and just focus on this. It also shows you a cause and effect. It can tell you what to expect. For every action, there's a reaction, and just like the real world. And again, this one is the trickier one, but it can express a brand's personality. It can add character and appeal. and can make your product feel alive. Okay, now let's get into the most basic properties of UI animation. The basic properties are these, and I highlighted those two because we're gonna go super deep into those, okay? But I'm pretty sure you've seen this. If you're a designer, you've changed these things. The cool thing about animation is that you're adding time to these states. Suddenly the opacity changes, suddenly the position changes, and you're adding time between those two states. So let's start with easing. So the thing is that in nature, nothing just moves linearly. In reality, things tend to accelerate and decelerate. So that's what easing does. For example, here, it's not like I'm going to start just like moving at full speed and then suddenly stop, and then move at full speed and suddenly stop. Actually, I mean, probably if I was a robot or a weirdo, but usually you start like pick up speed, and then when you slow down. That's what easing is. That's the acceleration and deceleration. That's usually how things move. That's how people move. That's the behavior you expect from nature. So actually, I was talking with someone yesterday, and we were talking about hand-drawn animation. And this person, I don't remember his name. I'm sorry. Must be somewhere there. We're talking about hand-drawn animation, and then I was talking about the things that I was able to learn by doing hand-drawn animations. So I decided to draw an example for you last night. So here we have the different frames from a ball. It's really basic, but here's telling you the overlapping elements. And then once you put them together, we add a little bit of time, and now we can see that those elements, once they're put together, there's an animation. And as you can see, up there are more frames. And that means that it's a little bit slower. And then it goes down, and it goes a little bit faster, because there's more space between the frames. Here's another example, because it's Halloween, so let's do another example. So here, I turn into a bat, and let me show you, because the timing is determined by the frames. So what is actually happening? So these are all the frames that are happening here. So as you can see on the first row, it almost looks like it's just the same drawing. It's actually just little movements, just small movements. And I had to draw each frame with just those small movements because it's slow, and there's a little bit of cushioning. That's the ease in and the ease out. The more frames, the slower it is. Then suddenly on the second row, you see that, boom, big change happens super quick. It goes from this state, and boom, suddenly I'm a bat. And it all happens super quick. It's just like, you don't even see it. And then suddenly, here, these three almost look like it's the same bat, but actually just a little bit, and then pow, pow. Because we want to show that movement. When it's up, it's a little bit slow. Oh, man. It's a little slower, and then it goes down, and then that's why we have more frames in the beginning. So I would invite you to actually do that kind of experiment, where it's like you actually do hand-drawn animation, because that will force you to understand those things that programs already do for you. Yeah, but I don't know. I think that there's a little bit of magic I'm doing it by hand and understanding, oh, okay, this is what's happening. So, okay, let's go on to what programs do for you. Oh yeah, by the way, here's again. Anyway, an easing curve, which is, we're talking about that, by the way, forgot. It's a line that defines acceleration or pattern on this graph. It's just telling you on time, and then a property changes. For example, here, it's an X value or a Y value. And then from left to right, it's just telling you the time. So when it's linear, it's just like, moves like that. There's no, it starts and it stops. But then we see that that curve, and it's just telling you that it starts a little bit slow, grabs speed, and then it stops. Okay, but this is a little bit boring, right? Let's actually see it moving. So here I have tacos to show the different types of animations, because what better way to see animation? All these tacos are just going to the other side at the same time. They're all arriving at the other edge at the same time. They're all taking, I think, 1 second. But some of them look like they're a little bit slower, or they probably don't arrive at the same time, but they all do. The thing is that some of them are a little bit slower in the beginning, but then they pick up speed and then pow, arrive there. The other ones are probably start really fast, but then they slow down at the end. They're all using the different curves. So actually, let's see it in examples. So here, now let's upgrade. Let's do a burrito now. So here in the burrito, we see the actual movement of the burrito against the curve. This is an ease in, ease out curve. We see the curve gradually accelerating and then accelerating, really smooth, natural. Now we see a spring animation, which is something that you will, it's pretty common on mobile devices. Spring animation, this one starts a bit faster and then it ends really smoothly. It's hard to see at what moment the actual animation stops. And then this is spring animation. If we we remove a little bit of the damping, then we can add an overshoot. And just like it bounces a little bit. There's a little bit of momentum. Let's actually see the values here. So here we have the damping all the way up, and this is what's preventing the burrito to overshoot, to bounce. So there's no oscillation. It's very viscous. This is a really loaded burrito. And over here, I think this is more like a vegetarian burrito. No carne asada on this one. So it's a little bit, it bounces, you know? There's not a lot of weight on it. So we removed a little bit of the damping. So now it bounces a little bit. There you go. And now, I don't know. This is like a bouncy burrito. Probably it's just like has jumping frijoles or something. The idea here, we remove some of the damping, remove some of the weight, so now it doesn't have enough strength to prevent the oscillation. It's a bouncing burrito. And here we add a little bit of velocity, so the burrito starts right away, still with the same oscillation, and then, I don't know, just like starts faster. It's just like probably I put some salsa on it. And now it's ready to eat. Delicious and nutritious. Okay, those were some technical details, but those are the kind of things that you're going to be editing. And a lot of the times, seriously, you're just like, no, I don't like it. Okay, yeah, this looks good. There's going to be a lot of that. But probably we can avoid that by understanding when to use, like probably some principles of when to use what ease in, what ease out, ease in and out, or spring. So let's see it in action. Here, again, linear and poopy. Just like the poop is just moving mechanically. It starts right away, and then it stops. Here, let's see a pizza that is entering the screen. Sorry, it's exiting the screen. When an element, this is a good rule of thumb. You use easing when an element is exiting the screen. So it starts accelerating, and then it ends at full speed. But it's outside of the screen, so you don't care, whatever. But in the beginning, when it's in the view of the person that is using your product, you want it to start a little bit slower, or at least feel a little bit natural. Once it's outside, you don't care. So you can use easing. The opposite happens when, for example, here, the hot dog, it starts at full speed, and then it ends gradually. It accelerates once it's inside the screen. It eases out. Now, here the spaghetti is always on the screen. So here it's good to use ease in and out because it's always on the screen. You want to have that natural movement. And here we have a little cake. And here on this one, I am actually using a gesture. A good rule of thumb is use a spring when the animation is going to be controlled or triggered by a gesture, like a dragging or swiping, because it feels more natural. It's so weird. Okay, one more time, really quick. Linear. It's kind of mechanical. It doesn't feel right. Now, eases out. It starts at full speed, and then it eases out. Then the opposite. It starts a little bit slow, and then it ends at full speed. Now both at the same time, it eases in and it eases out. Just this menu. And then control by a gesture. You can add a little bit of overshoot with a spring. Okay, let's see the taco again. It's obvious, right? That's what we wanted. The taco, all the tacos arrive at the same time with different easing curves. Okay, now let's talk about duration. This is very important. It's animation, so it's all controlled by time, right? So animation is change that happens over time. And the duration tells us, I know this is obvious, but it tells us how long the animation lasts. So here we have an animation that is happening in 100 milliseconds. And this animation almost feels instant. So it's better to use this kind of duration when it's something small, like a button that is changing color or an icon that is changing the opacity, because if not, it just feels too fast. Now let's see it at 300 milliseconds. And here it feels a little bit more responsive. It's without being too disruptive. Probably it's a little bit too slow. This is something that you have to decide. But here we have it at 300 milliseconds. And now at 700 milliseconds, this is slow. This kind of speed you want it probably with a bigger interaction, when a whole page is loading or a whole page is moving. Oh, whoa, what happened? Did I break it? I think I pressed the wrong button. I'm sorry. What did I do? All right, yeah. That's all part of the plan. Okay, 700 milliseconds, and here you have it. This is something that you will probably want to just like say, what are the different types of timing that we want on our company, on our product to use. And it's kind of good to use it as a typographic scale. You know, when you say, I have a base of 16 pixels on my paragraph text, and then after that is 21, and then after that is 35. You use a different typographic scale. I would do the same with my timing, and then just use it use it consistently on your product. Whew. How are we doing? Yeah, is it boring? I'm talking about animation, I'm just talking about the properties. How boring is that? Okay, let's continue. Here, very basic, but the position. Why change the position? It just tells you the direction in which elements travel. It gives you the orientation and context. Here, the burger is going from one space to the other. Then the scale, it just tells you an object that appears closer, further away in space, telling you the importance of the objects and drawing the user's attention. Rotation, don't use rotation, by the way, unless it's like a record that is moving or something that really makes sense. Probably a spinner. Usually rotation is good for stuff when it's telling you like, hey, just stop working on the background, okay? Don't use rotation unless you're really sure about it. And opacity, this is probably the easiest way to just like go from one state to the other. Just change the transparency from a moving object. It goes, it's just down. An overlay, it just creates this idea of a 2D object and this flat screen, that there are objects on top of each other with an overlay. And choreography, this is when multiple new elements are animated. And again, it feels they don't all arrive at the same time. There's a choreography, there's a little bit of grace. They're gracefully, these animals appearing on the screen. And then parallax, this just creates that spatial hierarchy. It just tells you that some elements are closer, other elements are further away. And I don't know, whenever you're going on the car and you look at the window, the mountains over there, they almost feel like they don't move. And whatever is closer to you, that's the kind of stuff you can do also with parallax animation. Pretty hot too, by the way. So the not so basics, we're not going to be talking about this today, but this is something that you will do. And it's using animation for personality, timing and spacing, and storytelling. There's probably a Medium post coming soon. And the no-nos, I told you to go crazy and break shit. do it, but also have this in mind, where you don't try to be flashy. You're not just using animation for using animation because it's cool. You just don't make it expensive. And you make it expensive not just on the resources of developers you're using. You're making it expensive yourself because you're doing something that probably doesn't make sense. And also you're making it expensive on the user because it can lag, it can affect the performance. So don't make it complicated, don't forget the intention, just don't abuse animation. Here, I have an example too. It's just like all of those little things. Hey, look at me. Don't do that, please. Okay, the tools. The tools of the game, there are I think there are three different types of tools. The ones that are purely for animation, the ones that are for prototyping, and the ones that are for implementation. So for animation tools, probably the king or queen of them all is After Effects. It's just like, it gives you a lot of power. Then after that, I would say that Keynote is actually pretty cool. Someone else was telling you about magic moves. It is like magic. Then Animate, it used to be called Flash. And then if you really are into hand-drawn animation or like professional animation for characters, I recommend Toon Boom too. And Photoshop too. All my animations, I make them in Photoshop. For implementation tools, we're not gonna get into this, but these are the kind of things that you wanna learn, depending on the type of code or how you're building your app or product. But After Effects too, if you're already using After Effects for animation, you can use it with plugins like Lottie, and then export your animation as CSS. Also, Google's motion library, things that are already built for you, just sort of copy and paste. CSS animation library, Swift for iOS, JavaScript, and also Webflow. It's a pretty cool tool where you can actually animate stuff and implement it. Now, for prototyping tools. Prototyping tools allow you to ideate and create many iterations on the fly. This is like when you go crazy, break shit, and it's okay because you're just prototyping it. So these are some of the prototyping tools that are out there: Principle, Flinto, Framer, Origami, Protopike, and also Studio. That's where I work, and that's the tool that we're working on. So let me show you, just do a little bit of a commercial, why Studio I think is pretty cool. With Studio, you're able to do all those kind of things, also that granular level that you have with other animation tools, like on After Effects. You have the timeline too, but also here's a tool that you will use also for designing. You can import also your sketch files if you want to, and then animate them there. You can do simple stuff like this, where everything is connected and automatically connects everything that is between the states. You can do more complex interactions where you're just using gestures like dragging or swiping. And you can do crazy stuff like this too, changing the values. Here's how Envision works. Again, I know I'm biased, but I honestly think it's dope. You get to do all these kind of things, and also you have the granular control of a timeline. Is the timeline going to show? You connect different things, save it, and then it animates. Oh yeah, there you go. That's a timeline. So if you want to use the timeline, you can use it too. Here's an animation that I created with it. I designed it and animated it inside Studio. It's Frida Kahlo. By the way, apparently there's an exhibition of Frida Kahlo here. I want to go. Okay. So yeah, and then you just connect the different states, and then Studio just automatically creates that animation for you. Okay, we're almost done. On this one, we're going to go over some practical tips. So here on the left, we have the good animation. It just goes from one state to the other. On the right, we have a great animation. Animation that establishes a connection between the elements. There's a correlation between the elements, and the elements stay there. You see them grow, you see them fall into place. You use a cascading effect. We're talking about choreography. So the elements fall into place using a little bit of delay. They don't just all appear at the same time. Dialogues or menus or elements or cards, they appear from where you call them instead of just appearing out of nowhere. Use animation to call attention. Again, don't do too much of this. Don't abuse it. But if it is really important and if it makes sense for the user experience, why not use animation in a subtle way? And just elements push the others. There's a reaction from every action. And also can show you continuity with these steps. It's just a transition between the elements. Pretty basic stuff, low-hanging fruits. You do this, and then you create a better experience. And that's it. Just a recap. Thank you so much. So recap, me. Why animation? Hopefully you felt like you understood why animation is important, how to use it. You learned the basic properties you can learn. You can edit, you can change, you can control some of the animation tools that are out there. Hopefully you get to test Studio 2 and some practical tips. Hopefully the goal of it was that now it feels a little bit more obvious when you open your phone and you understand what's happening. It's just like obvious. You got it. And I hope you're ready to make everything move. And I hope you are able to animate responsibly. And yeah, have fun, break shit, and keep it weird. Gracias. Thank you. Oh my God, I'm nervous.
Oh, they're just so mean. These questions are just mean.
Oh my God.
Okay, I know you guys. What is up? I know.
This is so cool. Okay.
Okay, let's see.
Let's
I'm
go
gonna
with
see
the
where to
not so mean
start.
words.
You want me to throw some softballs first? Okay. I'm sorry. I'm seeing where to start. Okay. So there's a couple of things in here. Here's one. How do you make sure your animations can be reproduced by the development team?
Yeah, well, if you're not using an implementation tool, you got to sit down with them and just like do it together. Investigate what they're using, what is the language they're using, if they're using CSS, if it's JavaScript, if it's React. Look at the libraries, what is already out there, and see if you can make their life a little bit easier. And then after that, probably you can edit some of those libraries and make it your own. And then that way, instead of actually going over every animation, you just say, hey, use the ease in quad, ease out quad, and that's it. So you gotta prototype it, at least, make a video, and then sit together and actually do it together.
Okay, I'm following another one that's sort of related. I think it's like really how do you also communicate with designers and developers about between designers and developers about the nature of, I'm trying to think, where did that go?
Yeah,
things keep jumping.
I think prototypes now give you the ability to communicate those things really easily and control those things that are not just a video, but you actually see it in your hands, reacting to your gestures, to your actions.
Right.
So a prototype, if a picture tells 1,000 words, a prototype tells 1,000,000 words.
Yeah, okay. 1,000,000 words, okay. There's so many. Sorry, so I'm trying to navigate these.
Oh man.
Okay.
I'm nervous.
No, this is easy.
Okay.
No, it's not easy, but it's interesting, right?
Okay.
So we've got, and this has been a theme in the conference. Like, so is there a such thing as the localization of animation? And if so,
wow, that is crazy.
What works in one place and not in others?
I think I didn't touch this, but there has to be a way where, number one, animation has to be optional. If you don't want to subscribe into the animation and the things that, like, your product should work without animations. It should be clear enough without the animations. So the animation should communicate better what the product is trying to say, what it's trying to do, but it should work without the animation. Now, localization, I never thought about that. I suppose, like, yeah, some elements need to probably, if they're reading from right
Like,
to
that's
left.
what I was thinking, like left to
start-
right.
I will have to come back to that one. I never thought about that, but it's
Yeah.
my mind has been blown.
Mine is. Okay.
Thank you for that question.
It's a really interesting one. There was one that there was one that's way down here someplace, but the question is, how do you know when to stop?
Is it clear? Is it obvious?
Yeah.
Is it? I think usually we apply animation at the end. Sometimes
Okay.
we think, well, now make it animate, and I think animation should be part of your process from the beginning.
Right.
You should think how to incorporate animation from the beginning, and not just at the end and just like make it look fancy. If it's already working without the animation, if it's already communicating, then don't apply animation. It probably doesn't need it. So I'm here advocating and also not advocating for animation because you might not need it.
It's like with great power comes
Yeah, exactly.
great. That's actually, okay, so you started, so you talk about doing it earlier I'm sorry, it keeps jumping because people are voting up and down while it's happening, which is awesome. But along those lines, so when do you start planning and thinking about those in the prototyping process? Or, yeah.
I think we should incorporate animation, not just be arbitrary, as a decision that you made to choose a typeface, the colors that represent your product or your company, the different components. Animation should be part of that design system. So again, it's not something that just comes later. It's part of your system. So it should be thought from the beginning too, and just like, hey, if you're going from this state to this other state, then an animation will be able to communicate that. So it's I understand that that's not the case always, but I would invite you to incorporate it into your design system.
Do you ever test animations?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, another commercial, but yeah, with Studio you can test, you can send the link, and all the animations happen on the web too, like whatever you're prototyping there. So, usually sometimes it feels like I can see from people that feel there's a little bit of lag, if there's a little bit of discomfort. They usually don't tell you. They're
kind of like a little movement or like.
Yeah, people are really forgiving on tests.
Yes.
So you have to be able to catch those things.
Yeah.
And if something didn't feel right and you cut that, there's something wrong with the animation, and you should probably cut it.
Do you know I think it's Laurie Anderson's phrase that talking about music is like dancing about architecture? Do you know that phrase? But it's the idea that there's like a language. So animation is this kind of, it's like a magical experience. It's nonverbal. And so sometimes maybe even talking about it in a test situation doesn't actually give you what they mean. And so I'm just curious, like, if you're doing remote testing, how do you see, because I think you're reading off of facial gestures or that vibe. How do you actually see that?
Well, hopefully the remote test also has, like, you're doing it with a camera and you're able to capture that.
Yeah.
But I mean, usually on the test, you're trying to let the person know, like, hey, be vocal about the things you're feeling, everything, just say it. You're not going to hurt my feelings. And probably would be a good idea to actually mention that. Hey, if the animation feels like it's lagging, say it too. You know, like actually mention that.
Yeah. Let's give them the language a little bit.
Yeah.
So, style guide and consistency. So how do you create a consistent animation language, or do you, across platforms?
Yeah.
Or
So
products?
I think it's you gotta work with your easing curves, like the basic properties that I was telling you about. Probably some start with animation principles, the things that make sense to you, and then like why and when to use animations, and then start going into the actual properties, like the easing curves that you would use, and then say, okay, we're going to be using an easing quad for this type of interaction. That's just an exercise you have to do with your team. And again, a lot of these things, they have to, it's almost like you make a decision on the things that feel natural, that make sense, and sometimes they only make sense until you try them and you put them in your hands and you see it and it's like, Well, I mean, it's also like choosing a color, choosing a typeface. A lot of it, there's some theory behind it, but ultimately the decision will be subjective too.
Yeah.
So I would say the animation, a lot of the decisions there will be there. But once you make the decision, then you put in a guide that says like, hey, these are the durations that we're going to be using. These are the types of easing we're going to be using. And then you just try to be consistent with those things.
I have one tools question. There's actually a lot of tools questions on here.
Okay.
I'm going to ask one, though. So what tools do you use for animation, and which course/instructors do you recommend for starters?
There's a newsletter from Val Head. She has a book that is called, I don't know, something about UI animation, and you write it VAL Head, and then there's also, I mean, animation is so broad. I suppose like UI animation we're talking about. So I would look into what I did, like what the giants are doing, because Google, Apple, IBM, a lot of these companies are really investing into like finding out the theory behind this, and also the technology of how to make a animation feel like without lagging, at a good frame rate, and all those things. Study those things.
Yeah.
And a course? Well, you can watch my YouTube channel.
Watch his YouTube channel. What's it called?
Sketch Together.
Sketch Together. There's one.
Yeah.
But it also sounds like learning from, everyone's learning this right now, so it's...
As I was saying, like we're all making it up as we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then probably the principles that you see from one company, they'll later probably change because they found out that, hey, you know what, this doesn't feel right anymore. So I don't know. I think I mean you want to also learn from the grades, like if you are interested into those things. But from Disney, from like there's the 12 principles from Disney. I would say that not everything applies to UI. You're not going to be squishing and squashing your text and your buttons, but it's a good exercise to learn and learn the thinking behind those things, and see what actually applies and what doesn't. Yeah, it's I don't know. It's really interesting, those things.
Great. Well, let's give a big round of applause to Pablo Stanley.
Hey, selfie. Hold on.
Amazing. Oh, selfie.
Yeah, hold on.
Photobomb this guy.
Pretend like you really enjoyed it, okay?
Yay!
Una, dos,
Photobombing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. There you go.
Kuchanom? No?
What?
How do you say thank you again?
Oh, I have no idea. How does one say thank you?
Kusonom, yeah. Yeah, the kusonom.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Oh,
you.
yes. Oh, this is so nice. Look at that. Big face. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Yeah, it was great.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, my.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Okay.
The grand.
Thank you so much to all the organizers. You don't see this, but they have been great with all the speakers. They have done a tremendous job, and I really want to thank them. It's just like an amazing team, and they've done an amazing job. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
An applause
welcome.
for you guys.
In fact,